Hello friends! I've been feeling a little out of it the past couple weeks, so I thought it would be fun to do something different this week. So we are gonna try out gouache. I've never used gouache and I've always wanted to try it. This is gonna be my first time using gouache ever. We'll see how it goes. But first things first, I was reading a little bit about it and they said that you should swatch them first, so that's what I'm gonna do right now. So just in case you guys are wondering, this is the Artist's Loft gouache set of 24. It is a budget brand that you can get at Michael's. I think it's their store brand, Artist's Loft, and I just wanted to try this out instead of like a fancier one just because I've never used gouache before, so I figured it'd be better to start out with something simpler instead of like not really know what I'm doing and just totally wasting paint when I could get something affordable like this to try to figure out how gouache works. Honestly, I definitely recommend doing this with all types of paint, not just gouache, because you don't really need to have super expensive paint in order to get an idea for how it works. As far as this specific set of gouache goes, I don't think that I would recommend it because, as you could probably see in the swatches, they tended to be very streaky, and part of that was definitely because I was still figuring out how much water to use, because that's tricky with gouache. You have to find a balance of adding enough water so that it spreads well, but not so much that it's like too transparent, because it's not supposed to be fully transparent. And I kind of struggled with this. I mean, I expected to struggle a little with this because I did do a little bit of research that mentioned this as a potential problem you would run into. But I think it was also the nature of these paints. Like, these are not super high quality paints. So just be warned if you do get the Artist Loft paints that they're not like, they're definitely not the best. I think it would be a little easier to find a better consistency if you weren't using like a 24 pack of $10 paints. Like, it was not expensive. It was like, and I used a coupon too, so literally it was like 50 cents or like 45 cents a tube, which like yeah, so that just gives you an idea of what to expect. Also, I've heard that better gouaches, you can get a better consistency with them without as much struggling. So I just wanted to warn you guys in case you do end up trying these. Besides that though, I mean, they're pretty good. Like, as long as you don't add too much water, they do seem to have a really nice drag, and they are pretty opaque. They're like super saturated colors. Like, they're very dark, which isn't really my vibe. So that was a little bit of a struggle because I had to add a ton of white. I think unless you're doing like primary colors and you're really all about like the very basic primary colors, you probably would have to buy a separate tube of white gouache just because of how basic these colors are. Because you don't want them to be so dark. Or I didn't want them to be so dark. And yeah, I mean, besides that, I enjoyed using them. It was fun using them. It was definitely a lot harder than I thought it would be. I figured as somebody who's used watercolor for so long that like I'd pick this right up, and that was not the case. Like, the first painting that I did with these, honestly, I was pretty upset about how it looked, but you know, in the interest of honesty, I wanted to include it in here. But yeah, I was not happy with how it turned out. It was a bit disappointing for me. Also, you know, I was dealing with like some mental health stuff too at the time, so that probably didn't help. But yeah, for both of these paintings, I had planned to turn them into GIFs, like moving pictures using Photoshop. This second one here, I didn't get around to it yet. I may do it in the future, but the first one I did turn into a GIF using Photoshop, and here it is right here. I'm definitely still a beginner at doing this type of art, but I've been wanting to try it for a while. And then here's the final retouched version of this one in Photoshop. And then the next day I wanted to go paint outside because it was super warm this week. So we have this plot of daffodils that comes back every year, and I got an idea actually last year for a painting of a little tiny fairy in the daffodils. And I decided that, you know, trying it out with the gouache could potentially work really well and it could be really pretty. So that's what I did. And I mean, this may have been a bad idea. Honestly, I probably should have stuck with a subject matter that I'm more familiar with, because this was definitely challenging for more than one reason. Because it's not something I am in the habit of normally painting, and also painting outside is a lot harder than it looks, so props to any creators that like do really cool aesthetic paintings outside, because this is actually really hard. You know, there's bugs everywhere. It was like the sun was blinding me. I didn't have a desk. Like, I'm used to painting on a desk. I think at one point in here I dropped my book, my sketchbook right here. See, I dropped my sketchbook because a mosquito went after me. So yeah, it was a bit of a struggle, and it also was a struggle too because it was a lot more complicated than I had originally realized when I started it out. So I ended up finishing it later that night in my room, and I didn't even film it because I was just, to be completely honest, I was still pretty distraught about how it was looking. It was because it was like a base layer, and I was like, this looks horrible, when, you know, it was just a base layer and it had to have more layers put on top of it. But yeah, I just wanted to share my experience with you guys. I think I'm gonna keep trying with the gouache because it is fun to use, but I definitely have a lot to learn. And yeah, I just wanted to share my experience with you guys. I hope you all liked the video, and I'll see you next week. Okay, all right, okay, bye. Bye.